The land is quiet now. The sun sets over the rolling fields, casting long shadows over the earth that once ran red with blood. Here, in this very place, an army was swallowed whole. Over 50,000 men fell in a single day, their bodies piling atop one another in a scene so horrifying that even the victors dared not look for long. They were cut down, suffocated, trampled underfoot, faces frozen in terror, their cries fading into the dust. But the wind does not forget. It moves across the fields, carrying whispers, soft, distant, yet unmistakable. Some say it is nothing but the rustling of dry grass. Others are not so sure. Too many have stood here at dusk, feeling an unshakable presence, sensing that they are not alone. 2,000 years have passed, yet something lingers. Farmers tending to their crops speak of cold spots in the heat of summer, of a silence that is too deep, too unnatural. Travelers tell of hearing distant cries when no one is near, of footsteps following them in the dead of night, though the ground is empty. Some have turned back, unwilling to tempt whatever watches from the unseen. Are these mere tricks of the mind, the product of imagination wandering through the echoes of history? Or could it be something else, something left behind? If so many died here in fear, in agony, in the sheer chaos of a slaughter that lasted from morning until night, could it be that some never truly left? No monuments stand for the dead here, no grand memorials, no towering statues, only the land itself, silent, unchanged, eternal. But to those who stand still and listen, the past speaks. The wind shifts, the air grows heavy, and for the briefest moment, it feels as though something is watching, waiting. The question remains, is it just history pressing against the present, or is there something more in the whispering fields of Cannae? The year was 216 BC, and the Roman Empire, proud and unyielding, was on the brink of collapse. Far from their city walls, the ground beneath their feet was soon to become their grave. On the plains of Cannae, the stage was set for one of the most devastating defeats in military history, a day when the Roman legions were torn apart, leaving the blood of over 50,000 men to soak into the earth. Hannibal, the Carthaginian general, had already crossed the Alps with his army, an unimaginable feat that left Rome trembling. The Romans underestimated him, thinking his forces were scattered, disorganized, and ill-prepared. But in reality, he had already set his trap. The stage was perfectly arranged. Hannibal, ever the tactician, had lured the Romans into his trap with an apparent weakness. As they advanced toward his position, they believed they would crush the Carthaginian force in one fell swoop. But what they didn't realize was that Hannibal had set the perfect ambush. With his forces positioned in a crescent shape, he allowed the Romans to push into the center, where they were then completely encircled, caught in a deadly embrace. The Roman legions, once proud and invincible, were now trapped in a vice, unable to escape the crushing weight of their own desperation. The Romans were suffocating, the earth beneath them slick with blood, their movements slowed by the heavy bodies of their comrades. They struggled, clawing at the air, but there was no escape. In every direction, the Carthaginian forces closed in. The cries of soldiers filled the air, screams of terror, of pain, of the final realization that death was coming for them. The reality of battle was more than just the violence. It was the psychological horror of knowing there was no hope left. As the Roman soldiers looked around, they saw their comrades falling, crushed by the weight of their own bodies, the earth soaked with red. They realized there was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. In those final moments, it wasn't just their lives they feared losing. It was their very humanity. The men of Rome, who had marched in pride, now felt terror and helplessness. They were nothing more than cattle, slaughtered without mercy. Some reports say that when the battle was over, the field was so dense with bodies that the soldiers couldn't even stand. They sank into the earth, suffocated by the weight of the fallen, unable to free themselves, unable to see anything but the carnage that surrounded them. It was a day of unimaginable horror, not just in the bloodshed, but in the psychological destruction of the Roman spirit. They had never faced a defeat like this, one that would haunt them for generations. And as the final cries of the fallen echoed through the air, it became clear. The battlefield of Cannae had transformed into a place of death, a slaughterhouse where the only survivors were those who were lucky enough to escape, but their minds would never be free of the images they had witnessed that day. The aftermath of Cannae was more than a physical toll, it was a spiritual one. As the battle ended and the smoke of conflict began to dissipate, the once fertile land was now soaked in blood, an expanse of death that would not soon be forgotten. The stench of decay lingered in the air for weeks, a constant reminder of the carnage that had occurred. Bodies, both Roman and Carthaginian, lay in heaps, their faces frozen in the agony of their last moments. Yet the Romans refused to bury the dead, not out of disrespect, but out of fear. The land itself, they believed, had been tainted by the blood of so many soldiers. To bury their fallen would only further desecrate it, turning it into something that could never again yield the bounty it once had. What had once been a field of crops and life had now become something unholy, a battlefield that would never see proper harvests again. The earth was cursed, forever changed by the massacre. For years after the battle, survivors returned to the field, but what they found was far more unsettling than the physical scars they bore. Roman soldiers who had witnessed the horrors of Cannae firsthand spoke of strange phenomena. They described hearing the whispers of the fallen on the wind, voices calling out to them, begging for help, for vengeance. Some even claimed to have seen ghostly apparitions walking among the ruins, figures draped in tattered armor, the eyes of the dead forever haunting the living. These men, broken in body and spirit, were never the same. They walked through life with the weight of their memories pressing on them, the images of the slaughter seared into their minds. The nightmares that followed were relentless. Roman soldiers, even long after they had left the battlefield, found themselves unable to sleep without reliving the horrors of Cannae. The faces of the fallen, men who had died under the crushing weight of war, would appear to them in their dreams, accusing, pleading, and forever reminding them of their defeat. The legends of Cannae soon spread across the Roman world, whispered from soldier to soldier, from one city to the next. The ground itself had become cursed, and as the years passed, no crops could grow. The farmers who tried to till the soil found that the land, once so fertile, had turned barren. Nothing would take root. What had once yielded food and sustenance now gave nothing but dust and death. This, the Romans believed, was the price for the unimaginable slaughter that had taken place on that soil. Yet even as the years went by, the ghosts of the battlefield continued to linger in the minds of those who had fought. The shadows of the past crept into the present, haunting not just the land, but the very hearts of those who had been left behind. It wasn't just the soldiers who were affected, it was the entire Roman consciousness. Cannae was no longer just a defeat. It had become a symbol of a curse, a dark chapter in history that couldn't be erased, no matter how far time passed. For generations, the land around Cannae has been plagued by rumors of something far more than the mere echoes of history. Locals, those who have lived for decades near the battlefield, speak of ghostly soldiers who wander the field at night, their figures barely discernible against the darkened backdrop. These apparitions are not simple phantoms. They are said to be bound to the land, unable to leave the battlefield where they met their gruesome end. The haunting figures of men in worn armor, faces twisted with the agony of battle, are said to rise from the earth itself as if they are forever trapped in the moment of their deaths. The quiet air of the field at night is broken by muffled battle cries, sounds so faint yet so chilling that one cannot help but feel their presence in the wind. Some believe these cries belong to soldiers who fell on that fateful day, their final screams lost in time but still carried on the breeze. The sounds reverberate through the ruins, unnerving anyone who dares to listen too closely. These spectral echoes, which have no origin, continue to torment those brave enough to linger after dark. As if the sight of the wandering dead weren't enough, others who have ventured to Cannae speak of the phantom footsteps that seem to follow them, even when they stand still. Imagine walking through a desolate field, only to hear the unmistakable sound of footsteps, heavy and deliberate, yet no one is there. Tourists, historians, and even seasoned archaeologists who have spent countless hours on these ancient grounds recount the sensation of being watched by unseen eyes. Many have reported an overwhelming sense of dread, as if the weight of history presses down upon them, urging them to leave, to retreat from the place where so many met their violent end. It's as though the land itself is alive, responding to the presence of the living with a silent, oppressive force. The souls of those who perished during the battle seem to remain, not out of anger, but as a call for remembrance, a plea to never forget the violence that stained the soil. This overwhelming sense of dread is a sensation that strikes at the heart, a feeling so intense that even the bravest of men are left uneasy. But perhaps the most chilling phenomenon of all is the sudden appearance of phantom bloodstains after heavy rain. Visitors have often reported walking the field after a downpour, only to find that the ground, freshly soaked, begins to seep dark stains, the unmistakable signs of blood, where none had been moments before. The stains, sometimes in the shape of human figures or the outline of fallen soldiers, seem to emerge without warning, as if the earth itself is recalling the horror it once witnessed. No amount of scrubbing or washing can remove these stains, and they reappear after each heavy rain, as if the land refuses to let the past fade. Historians, many of whom have spent years studying the Battle of Cannae, can't explain this strange phenomenon. The ground, it seems, will not be cleansed, and the evidence of bloodshed will not be forgotten. The unsettling stories of Cannae are not unique. Across the globe, throughout history, other battlefields soaked with blood and pain are said to harbor similar echoes of the past. The haunted grounds of Gettysburg, the trenches of Verdun, and the bitter streets of Stalingrad are all places where the dead seem unwilling to leave. The lingering presence of soldiers, their anguish and suffering frozen in time, is a haunting reminder of the battles that raged on these sites. These places have become more than just historical landmarks. They have become silent witnesses to the brutality of war, holding on to the memories of those who perished within their borders. Soldiers who have visited these haunted grounds recount seeing figures in the mist, hearing voices in the wind, or feeling a strange sense of foreboding that makes them wonder if the land itself is somehow alive with memory. The weight of war doesn't just vanish with the passage of time. It is as if the very soil beneath their feet carries the weight of countless lives lost, forever haunted by the ghosts of those who once fought. These battlefields have witnessed atrocities, and many believe that these tragic events have left an indelible mark on the land. There is a theory, one that has circulated among historians and paranormal researchers alike, that extreme violence and trauma leave an imprint on the land itself. Some believe that the suffering of thousands, whether from battle, starvation, or fear, becomes engraved into the very fabric of the earth. This energy, trapped in the place where it occurred, manifests itself as disturbances, ghostly apparitions, mysterious sounds, and visions of the past. It is as if the land has become a mirror, reflecting the violence of the moment and holding on to the memories of those who died in pain. The earth, it seems, does not forget. Across the world, this concept is supported by similar phenomena at various other battlefields. At Verdun, where over 300,000 soldiers perished in a battle that lasted nearly a year, reports of phantom gunfire, unexplained cries of soldiers, and strange shadows crossing the trenches persist. At Stalingrad, the frozen remains of soldiers who fought there are said to haunt the city, their spirits unable to rest after the brutal siege. These stories don't just come from historians or paranormal enthusiasts. They come from those who have visited, walked the land, and felt the weight of history on their shoulders. Among the most unsettling reports from soldiers in wars past are accounts of visions of fallen comrades, ghostly encounters that seem to foreshadow their own demise. Many soldiers have claimed to see their fellow men who had perished days or even years before, standing silently beside them, offering a wordless warning, or simply watching as if from afar. These visions of death are not always explained by trauma or exhaustion, but seem to transcend normal human perception. Soldiers, faced with the inevitable end, are often said to experience these spiritual visits as though they are receiving a final, unspoken message from those who came before. Such experiences are not isolated to a single war. Throughout history, whether on the battlefield of Waterloo, the Somme, or Iwo Jima, soldiers have reported seeing comrades from past battles, men who died in the heat of combat. The spiritual connection between those who fight and die together runs deep. For many, these encounters are not merely hallucinations, but a reminder that the sacrifices of war are never forgotten. They remain a permanent presence in the minds of those left behind. The mass trauma endured by soldiers during major conflicts often leaves a long-lasting imprint, not just on the bodies of those who survive, but on the very places where these wars were fought. These locations, where thousands perished, carry an energy that resonates through time. It is as if the psychological echoes of war are forever woven into the landscape. The soldiers who fought in these battles were often subjected to unimaginable horrors, and it's said that this collective suffering manifests itself in these haunted places, creating an unseen, persistent presence. For those who have been fortunate or unfortunate enough to step foot on these battlefields, it's clear that something about them is different. The weight of history is not simply found in books or archives, it is embedded in the land itself, whispering the stories of the fallen. Perhaps, in the end, it is not the battlefield itself that is haunted, but the memories of the soldiers, their sufferings, their sacrifices, their voices that will never be silenced. As the whispers of Cannae's haunted battlefield persist, a new wave of inquiry has emerged. Paranormal investigators, driven by curiosity and a desire to uncover the truth, have made their way to the site. Armed with the latest tools of modern investigation, they have sought to gather hard evidence of the supernatural. They have combed through the fields at dusk, set up thermal cameras, and used sophisticated EVP, electronic voice phenomena equipment, to capture voices from the beyond. On their recordings, some claim to have caught eerie sounds, the unmistakable echoes of soldiers still marching, their voices lost in the wind. Others speak of cold spots, areas of sudden freezing air where none should exist. Thermal imaging devices have captured unexplainable figures, seen flickering in the distance, their outlines appearing and disappearing just out of reach. It's as if the land itself has preserved these moments, and now the ghosts of the past are unwilling to fade away. But are these truly the spirits of Cannae, or is something else at play? However, there are those who challenge these extraordinary claims. Skeptics, often armed with rational explanations, argue that the phenomena captured on film and through recordings may not be paranormal at all. Could these voices simply be the result of audio interference? Might the cold spots be an environmental anomaly, a fluctuation in temperature caused by the landscape's natural features? The thermal anomalies could be nothing more than reflections, or even the play of light and shadow in the darkness. These possibilities cast doubt on the claims, leaving many to wonder, is it history and the human imagination that has created these haunting visions, or is there something more? This tension between the historical, the supernatural, and the skeptical creates a complex and enduring debate. On one hand, there are those who argue that the experiences of paranormal investigators are evidence of something greater, something beyond the physical realm of understanding. On the other, there are those who claim that these stories are simply the result of superstition and the human need to explain the unexplainable. The ghost stories surrounding Cannae, like those of many other battlefields, exist at the intersection of history and belief. They are relics of the past, preserved in the minds of those who lived through them. But are they truly more than that? For some, these investigations are an attempt to bridge the gap between the past and the present. For others, they are a way of grappling with the inevitable questions of life, death, and what may lie beyond. Can historical tragedies like Cannae ever truly be forgotten? Or are they forever etched into the fabric of the land, waiting to be uncovered by those who dare to seek the truth? Ultimately, the search for evidence at Cannae brings us face to face with the limits of human understanding. The historical record cannot always explain the emotions of the dead or the lasting impact of mass trauma on the land. What we are left with are fragmented stories, unsettling sounds, and faint glimpses of figures that refuse to remain in the past. The battlefield of Cannae, much like any site of great human suffering, holds on to its secrets. Secrets that may never fully be understood. Perhaps the most unsettling conclusion is that the line between the living and the dead may not be as clear as we would like to believe. War has a way of leaving its mark, both on the land and in the hearts of those who witness its horrors. The physical scars of battlefields like Cannae are unmistakable, the soil stained with the blood of those who fought, the remnants of weapons and armor scattered across the land like forgotten relics of another time. But there is something more subtle, something deeper that endures long after the last soldier has left. The psychological weight of war, the trauma, the grief, the loss, lingers in the minds of those who lived through it and in the very air above these cursed grounds. Can a place that has witnessed such destruction and agony ever truly be at peace? Or does the suffering of countless lives leave a mark that the passage of time cannot erase? The question arises, do these battlefields hold more than just memories? Historians and paranormal experts alike have long debated whether these sites, soaked in the anguish of countless fallen soldiers, can carry something beyond their historical significance. Can the land itself absorb the rage, the pain, the fear, and the desperation of those who died there, imprinting these emotions into the soil, the air, the very ground they fought and perished on? Is it possible that the echoes of battle remain, reverberating long after the last weapon is sheathed, as if the land itself becomes a living witness to the bloodshed? As the years pass, do these echoes shape the landscapes, molding them into sacred places of sorrow, or are they simply the figments of the human imagination, desperately trying to explain the horrors of war? Throughout history, cultures have found ways to honor the fallen, to give meaning to the loss, and to help the living process the incomprehensible tragedy of war. From grand monuments to simple rituals, societies have strived to remember those who fought, those who died, and those who survived. But when the rituals end and the monuments fade into the background, what happens to the spirits of the dead? Why, after centuries, do certain battlefields still seem to hum with an eerie presence, as though the souls of the fallen have never truly left? Could it be that, through the act of remembrance, the dead are not allowed to rest, trapped in a loop of loss and longing, forever bound to the very land they gave their lives for? As we reflect on the cost of war, we are forced to confront a troubling thought, that perhaps the spirits of the fallen never really leave us. They are not simply figures in stories or legends, but rather the haunting echoes of something far more profound. The memories of these soldiers, their sacrifices, and their unrelenting struggle are interwoven into the land itself, becoming part of its very essence. But is it a curse, or is it a reminder, a powerful reminder, that war is not something to be taken lightly? These echoes, whatever their true nature, ask us to never forget the cost of conflict, to remember that the physical scars of war may heal, but the emotional wounds may never truly disappear. And perhaps, in some way, the battlefield of Cannae will always carry its stories, of soldiers, of bloodshed, and of those who were left behind to carry the burden of memory. As we close the chapter on the haunted ruins of Cannae, one can't help but wonder, is the legend of this blood-soaked battlefield truly the stuff of myths, or is there something deeper lurking beneath its haunted surface? The relentless cries of the fallen, the footsteps that echo on empty ground, are they the whispers of a forgotten past, or the voices of those who can never leave? As time continues to pass, we are left to ponder whether these ruins, scarred by one of the most horrific battles in history, will ever truly let go of their tragic past. History is a delicate balance of what is remembered and what is lost. But perhaps in the case of Cannae, it is not a matter of forgetting, but of something else entirely. Something that continues to echo through time, like a warning, or maybe even a call to remember the cost of war and the lives that were forever changed by it. But this isn't just a story about a battlefield. It's a reflection of war itself, how it is never truly over, even long after the last shot is fired and the last body is buried. The scars of Cannae are not just in the earth, but in the minds of those who witnessed it, those who live with its weight, even generations later. And so we ask, can we truly bury the past, or is it always going to speak to us in ways we may not understand? Will the voices of those who perished in this bloodshed linger forever, or will time eventually allow them to fade into silence? It's a question that does not have a clear answer, but one that we must confront if we are to understand the true nature of war. Now, we turn to you, the viewers. What do you think? Do you believe the legends surrounding the haunted ruins of Cannae are simply the product of an overactive imagination, or do they hold a deeper truth about the emotional and spiritual aftermath of war? Have you ever visited a place where history left an unshakable presence, or perhaps encountered a ghostly encounter of your own? Share your thoughts, your theories, and your experiences in the comments below. Let's continue this conversation about the shadows of history, how they still impact us today, and why some stories refuse to fade into the past. If you found this journey into the unknown fascinating, please like, comment, and subscribe for more in-depth explorations into history's greatest mysteries. This is just the beginning. There's much more to uncover, more stories to be told, and more ghosts of the past to confront. Stay tuned, because the world of war history is full of secrets still waiting to be uncovered.